At this time, I would like to call to order the September 25th, 2023 meeting of the Hartford Joint One School District Board of Education. Could I have a roll call, please?
Here.
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 This is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the district's business and is not to be considered a public committee meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Any district resident wishing to speak should have filled out a card located in the sign-in table and given to the board secretary. Stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Perfect, would you like to lead us in?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. To consider approval of the agenda. The purpose of this item is twofold. The first reason is to verify that public notice has been given according to state statute 19.84. Madam Secretary, has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes.
Thank you. Second reason for the approval of the agenda is to consider tabling any items or rearrange a order of events. I don't think any board member need anything rearranged or anything, so. With that, I need a motion to approve the approval of the agenda.
A motion to approve the agenda.
Second, any discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion passed. Do we have any citizen delegations we heard? Okay. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Villalobos and her administrative report.
Thank you, President Erickson. So the first thing that I would like to do is I would like to turn it over, just in case there are any brief words. We had our summer academy. We had a total of just under 350 students participate. I know that prior to my jumping on board at Hartford Joint One, things were well underway and there was a lot of planning that went into this. So I don't know if there's any additional information that would like to be shared, but it was a success. And so just sharing that with you today. The next thing that we had to share was the achievement gap reduction or the AGR goals. You heard Mr. Majerus talk a little bit about that during the annual meeting. The math and reading goals have been updated for the 23-24 school year. So that way they are aligned with our goals. In terms of board updates, I had several. The first one is that Wisconsin School Board Appreciation Week is the week of October 1st through the 7th. So I want to thank you publicly for all of the work that you do. You saw the salary that is accrued for our board members for the week, for the year. It's essentially a volunteer role. And so there's a lot of commitment and time that all of you put into that. You're a vital function to our school district. And so we thank you in advance. As a reminder, we will be doing our board dinner with all of the Hartford area schools on October 4th as part of School Board Appreciation. So I do have your meals in place. However, if you have not yet done your school board connection, please do so. That was the link that I sent out last month and earlier this month. And if you need any help, just let me know. And if you don't remember because you did it a long time ago, also let me know and I will let you know if you're taken care of or not. We have our upcoming board retreat dates. So for those of you in the audience, we did have our first of 3 board retreats earlier this month. We have the second on October 16th, and we're going to be having Ted Knightsky from CISA 6 come in and talk to us about boardsmanship. And then we will have a follow-up on the 18th. So we'll have heard from our attorneys, from our CISA, and then we'll have Dan Murad from WASB come in on the 18th, and we'll be doing a review of all 3 dates. And then I just wanted to do some public recognitions. The WASB Policy and Resolutions Committee will be meeting this fall several times and then into the winter. And Ms. Shrunk will be serving on that committee and representing the school district of Hartford Joint One. So we appreciate her time and participation. And depending on the outcome of those meetings, she may come back to our meeting and share a little bit about what happened or what was determined there. Then we have the WASD Fall Legislative Conference. If you are interested in that, please let Ms. Hoffman know so that way she can sign you up for that. That is something where if we would end up having 3 or more people, we would want to post that. So it's important that you let her know as soon as possible. And then the last thing, which is just a board update today and will be an action item next month, is that I will be gone on December 19th. And so I just want our board members to be thinking about how you would like to conduct that December board meeting. If you want to have Mr. Majerus run it, or if you would like to change the day. So we're prepared for either. The high school does meet on December 18th, which is the day before, so we cannot do it that day. Then just a few updates in terms of the district updates. Did you want me to keep going, President Erickson? Okay. We have the Central Athletics Review meeting. So that was something that at the last board meeting, Mr. Majerus reviewed the school board feedback in terms of priority areas. That was one of the priority areas. And so Mr. Majerus, myself, Mr. Bisty, Mr. Stevens, and then also Mr. Perfect and another parent, Eric, will be with us. We'll be meeting at the end of this week to talk about athletics, co-curriculars. I'm working on a survey to share for them to review, and then we will bring it back to the board in terms of what transpired at that meeting. And then I just wanted to share a little bit about the Fall Superintendent Conference that I just returned from. This is an outstanding conference. Sometimes they are hit or miss. This was incredibly strong, and the sessions were outstanding. So one of the things that Mr. Majerus and I had talked about, and one of the things that came up during the interview process, was the potential for referendum here in the next few years. So I did attend a session on running a referenda campaign and what that looks like and strategies for passing that. Knowing that some of the culture and behavior was an issue that was raised when I was hired, I did attend a session on the expulsion process with DPI. I also, when I was at that session, I said, this is great that superintendents are hearing this, but really the people who are in the buildings need to hear this. So I pleaded with them to do a similar session with our assistant principals and principals at the upcoming, just like I have a conference, our assistant principals have a conference, our elementary principals have a conference, and our secondary principals have a conference. So I asked them to consider doing that again, or at minimum doing that virtually. And they seemed very agreeable to that. One of the things that we've been talking about, and when I say we, not just Hartford Joint One, but really across the state, is the shortage of educators. And so we were able to hear from Madison. They have what's called the teacher pledge. So if we know of any current middle schoolers, current high schoolers who are going into education or who are interested in going into education, Madison is running this program where if the individual agrees to teach for 3 or 4 years, depending on their certification area, upon graduation, that their education would be paid for, which is a really nice deal and a great opportunity that was not well known of prior to this conference. There were sessions on motivation. I'm very excited to bring some of that to our FISH or Force Days because our theme this year is Use the Force. And then because of the Act 20 legislation that was approved, I did attend a Science of Reading session, learned a lot about that, have spoken to Ms. Malter and Ms. Rogatska about our findings there and how that aligns with benchmark phonics. And then I also attended a session in DPI. And while not necessarily the most popular session, it was incredibly informative. And the 2 individuals who were representing DPI did a wonderful job of laying out clear timelines and then the objectives that we are expected to meet, along with what the state will need to be doing and the timeline and the process for that. So a lot of great insights that I'll be sharing with the administrative team as well. And then we had a session on women in the superintendency. We are now up to about a quarter of the female superintendents in the state of Wisconsin are female, so that's exciting. And then we had a session on leading with authentic confidence, which really revolved around coaching, communicating, and influencing. And the final session of the day was with our lobbyist from SAA. Her name is Dee Pettit. And then we also had Representative Joel Kitchens. So think Door County, that's the area that he represents, but he's very influential when it comes to education. The two of them did a session. They reviewed several of the bills that are either currently out or those that were just passed. And so a lot of very insightful information to bring back and share with both you as a board and our administrative team. So there's some on the recruitment and retention bill, restructuring. One of the things that was exciting is restructuring of the accountability report cards, because currently the way they're drafted, schools are rewarded for sending kids to college. And if you have other programming that also enhances or enriches your experience in high school, there is nothing that is documented on the report card. So looking into that was something he was willing to do. There's a bill for licensure for superintendents. Special education reimbursement is always a hot topic. And so he brought that up in terms of making sure that we could focus our efforts on that. We discussed the per pupil amounts, which you heard Mr. Majerus talk about during the annual meeting. The school start date, as you are all aware, we started school before September 1st this year. For those of you who are not as familiar with school law, there is a law that says we cannot start before September 1st, that public schools cannot start before September 1st. So many schools, because September 1st was on a Friday, and it did not make a lot of sense to have school for one day and then go away for a 3-day weekend and come back. Many schools this year used the exemption opportunity to start before September 1st. And we've been told from DPI that that will not happen again. And so there's a bill right now that's being circulated that would have the ability to start prior to September 1st, as long as the Friday before Labor Day was taken off. I'm very much in support of that. I also think it's a community need in terms of making sure that it aligns with our community's needs. That is something that Representative Kitchens is not in favor of, because he represents Door County and he's worried about how that would impact tourism. So one person's view on that, but definitely something that we should keep monitoring and keep our eyes on. And then there are two additional bills that Knodel, who represents our area and has stepped in for Senator Darling, that he is drafting right now. One is pay for paraprofessionals who are working on their teaching licenses. Again, another way to address the shortage. And the second one, which doesn't always impact, but it allows open enrollment for children of educators in a school district. So obviously right now, if you have an educator in the district, they can apply through open enrollment. This bill, if adopted, would guarantee it, whether the child has a different need or has a special education need that maybe in January we voted to say no, that we don't have space. That could open up an opportunity, which again, we know when people are connected to the district, both personally and professionally, the likelihood of retention is a lot higher. So it was an excellent conference, lots of very good information. Like I said, I'll be sharing that with the administrative team. And then stepping away from the conference that I was at last week, but looking at all that we have this week, we're here tonight with our annual meeting. It's a long night, but a fruitful night. And we have 3 great nights coming up this week. We started off at Central Middle School, then we moved to Rossman, then we moved to Lincoln for our family nights. Our community coordinators have done an outstanding job planning that night. And so it'll be a scavenger hunt followed by a surprise at the end. Do people, was it on there? Yes. Okay. So with ice cream at the end, didn't want to ruin anything. So 3 really great nights, and our team is excited to see families and welcome them in. And really, it's a nice opportunity to get people into the building. And then on Friday, if that wasn't enough of a school week for you, it is Hartford Union High School's homecoming. So there will be fun with the parade and the game, and then the next day of the dance. So a really fun and very busy week. So we'll all be tired next week.
Or we are now.
And that concludes my extensive report for this
Discussion.
session.
Want to do the discussion right away?
Sure. I am very excited. I alluded to this twice during my start of the annual meeting in terms of how we're supporting students and making student-centered decisions. And so I'm very excited to turn it over to Senora Perfect to talk to us about the EL program. And you can see in her opening slide, it's celebrations, EL celebration, English language. So would you like this? It's just a pointer. It's not a clicker because it's not plugged in, but you can use that. if you want to grab the mic, and then you can go wherever the mic will let you stretch to.
That's for maybe.
That's why you do the check, right? That was my favorite of my teammate husband. So thank you, everybody. I am so happy to finally be here in front of all of you to share what's been going on in the EL world. And just also, well, talk about what happened last year in my first year and then share some projections for next year. I flashed Brian when I wanted to advance. There we go. So this is what our district looked like at the end of last school year. So you can see all the countries that were represented and the languages that were represented. So I ended the year with 71 children that I serviced, and then also 11 monitor students, which means they had previously exited out of receiving EL services, but their progress is still monitored for the next 2 years after they're done with services. That's it for that set. And then next after that, we talk about a little bit about what my role is with the students. And so I brought this, Mr. Hanlon will know what this is all about. So as students come into our district, I meet with them, I give an interview and a tour to the families as they come to each of our buildings. If they are new from another district, I can also review their records. If they're new from another country, very often we don't have records for them. So that's why I give an interview to the families to get to know them so I can share that with classroom teachers and with administrators. And then after they are welcomed into our school, I try to stay with them on their first day or days as much as my schedule allows. I will assess them in their home language. If it's Spanish, if it's another language, I cannot do that. But then I will also screen them. So how we determine that students qualify for EL services is they get a screener and it checks their listening, speaking, reading, and writing in English. So if they're from another country, we know they're going to qualify, but we do that step. Then after that, I'll make language goals for them that's shared with teachers in the fall in an ILP meeting, which is their language plan. And then I start working with the students throughout the year based on need. And then I also support the teachers and parents during all of that time. So as we get closer to the winter season, that's when the testing happens. So from September to December, it's all about building relationships with those kids, figuring out their levels and what they need. So then in winter, I will assess their English levels, and that's the next slide. So how we measure their proficiency levels in English is with the test called Access. Up in this chart, you will see what we would expect students to, how long we would expect students to take to get English academic language proficiency. So for an example, if we have a new student come in 8th grade and they score at a level 1.5 on the Access test, can anyone see how long we would expect them to reach English academic proficiency?
7 years?
8. So yeah, so you go grade 5 and then you go over 1.5. And then they would be at, oops, did I just touch? They would be at 8. Can I go back for a second, please, if you don't mind, Ryan? So that's what we look at. Sometimes I think there's been a concern that when new students come, where we have this push to maybe get them exited out as soon as possible. And I just wanted to share this so people understand what the expectation is for when you arrive. If a new student arrives and they're already at maybe a 3, we only expect it would probably take about 4 years for them to exit out of EL services. So this is a really nice visual just to see where they are. And then at the bottom, you can see what those proficiency levels mean, what we call them, and some descriptors about what students are able to do at those levels. Okay, now we can go to the next one.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
about that? So if they're an 8th grader, obviously that's our last year here. So then do you immediately start to partner with high school to say, we have this new student, they're gonna need support
Yeah.
in their high school year? How does that partnership work?
So the student would have an ILP or their language plan that we would do here, and then that follows them to high school with all the information, and in the language plan, it'll say, they're newly arrived this year from, Mexico and received these services, these were their language goals, and then, right, high school would take it from there. That's a great question, I think that does happen.
I have a question too.
Yes,
How do you handle the 8 languages other than Spanish to get those kids up and running?
how do I personally, well, so I'm not a speaker of those other languages besides Spanish, but I can give you an example of what I do. So, entonces, voy a hablar en español, ¿ok? Gregorio, veo que tienes una camisa negra hoy. Me gusta tu camisa negra, Gregorio. No, you can't do.
Ya.
Luisa, estás usando una camisa azul como yo. Nosotros dos tenemos una camisa azul. Okay, so you might not know what I was saying, but how did you feel when I was talking to you? Did you feel lost? Did you feel okay? What did that feel like for you?
Lost.
Lost? And what
You were
about?
talking about the color purple, or that we were kind of liking.
Yeah, that we had
Yeah,
matching
yeah.
tops, yeah, okay, so what can I do is I cannot speak all of their languages, but I can give them eye contact. I can make connections by smiling, I can find something that they can probably figure out what I'm talking about in English. And you just take it from there one day at a time, because yes, I do not speak all of those languages, and neither do our teachers. So I worked really hard with staff, knowing how to translate documents for parents. Technology is a wonderful thing, so we are able to send things home in pretty much any language we encounter. But with working with kids, it's just one day at a time, building that vocabulary one day at a time. It's a good question. I wish I were fluent in all of those languages.
To piggyback up on Don's question, to assess or screen them if they don't speak Spanish, we have a program on the computer that helps to do that, or no?
They are screened in English for English
gotcha,
services.
gotcha,
But if
okay.
they are a Spanish speaker, I can do some baseline assessments like checking their reading levels, checking some basic math skills so that I can share with the teacher. Oh, they have this amount of literacy already in their home language. Now we know where to start with English. Or if a student comes to us and I find out they don't have any literacy yet in their home language, we know we are just starting from English from day one.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, we don't screen any
No,
other languages.
okay.
And when
Good
these
question.
kids come in, like say at first grade, during the middle of the course of the, say they come in October. They're admitted into the classroom right away with the teacher and the rest of the class.
Yes.
Wow, and I just wanna know how the teachers communicate with these kids that come in and they can't speak a word of English. And that's gotta be pretty difficult. How do they work with them on that?
Well, I'm not in every classroom all day long, every day, but I do try to, when I'm learning about the families, I share as much as I can with the teachers, and then I can give them examples. So when new students arrive, we have some newcomer arrival things that we share with teachers, like here's some things you can do in the first days, in the first weeks, in the first month to welcome your child in the room. And it is as simple as learn how to pronounce their name correctly, make eye contact, smile, point, gesture, go like this when you want the kids to stand up, whatever it may be. Those are the skills. And also just to say, it's okay that they're not doing everything that everyone else is doing from day one. If we get them feeling like they're part of the class and they're willing to follow along and see what everyone's doing and slowly start to participate, that's a win. There's not the expectation that instantly they should be ready to do what everyone else is doing. It's creating that comfort level first and just building that relationship.
Now, you might be hitting this a little bit later on, but how do you get kids that don't speak English coming into our school district to learn them English and that kind of stuff, but yet they go home and their parents and the rest of the family don't speak English?
Mhm.
How do you deal with that, with parents not being able to do it? And
Another great question. So like I said, so we do send home as much as we can in the home language. So parents are involved in what is going on in the classroom. But additionally, what we do with kids is just those beginning steps. So for example, myself and the new EL teacher at Lincoln, when we have new arrivals with no English, we focus with them and we just work on beginning vocabulary, pencil, glue, you know, all those things that we can kind of do and make it as comprehensible as possible, like holding up the actual thing, having a picture of it, matching, doing all of those things. We know that their little brains are not getting every single word that the teacher is saying. But with a lot of modeling, with a lot of repetition and routine, they will eventually, their brains are really quite phenomenal. And it's amazing what they are able to do in that short amount of time. But we expect that it will take a long time to get to the level of their classmates.
Okay.
Thank you for all these great questions. So now going on to access, which is how we assess their English levels. I think I mentioned earlier, there's 4 domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So when the students take those tests, they're about an hour each, and the window for this is December to January. So that's when they will be assessed this year. And then we get the results at the end of the year to then know how they're going to start the next school year. In the past, before I was here, I understand that the district hired somebody to do the testing. Cost a lot of money. It got done in a very short amount of time, but in what I believe to the detriment of the students, because they didn't have a relationship with this person. They didn't know who they were. They didn't know why they were being tested or what it was for. A lot of kids had mentioned to me they had a lot of anxiety because they were all in the library at the same time. And so when I came in last year and learned about that, I really wanted to change things around. So I made it a point to test students in my classroom, what they were already familiar with, and with me, who they knew. And we took it 1 test at a time. I didn't try to test 2 or 3 tests all at once. We spread it out. So it was a longer process to get all of the students assessed, but I believe we got much better results doing it that way than with someone from the outside just coming in and kids not really giving their best effort because they didn't know why they were doing it. I also wrote goals with all of the kids of what 2 areas they wanted to try to grow in on their tests based on their scores from the year before. So we did that together. I also sent bilingual notes home to all of the parents so they knew about testing, when their testing days would be for their students. So just really make it a more positive experience and to understand what the reason was for it. And then finally, when testing was all done, we had a celebration at all 3 schools just to really commend the students for what a great effort that they put in on the access test. So that took place in January in all 3 schools. So, and then I just want to share some of the results with you. I just did some district averages of how we did last year. And this was for all 3 schools. We tested 68 students total. It's on the next slide, please, Ryan. 53 of those were returning students. So we had many new students come in either from another district or new to the country. But we had a 94% increase on the students' overall scores. So like that composite score that I told you at the beginning, like if a student was a 1.5 when they came in, 94% of the students increased, and by an average of 0.78, so 3/4 of a point, which is a substantial level to go up in 1 school year. And in addition, 12 students exited last year. And so we had, let me think, I had 11 monitor students, yes, and so I had 11 monitor students, and now this year we'll have 10 because of the students that exited, and then some moved up to high school or left our district. So that's a little bit about the assessment and how we figure out kids' goals. There's no other questions about that. I was just going to move on to talk about the immigrant grant quickly. We applied for an immigrant grant in June. That's the next slide. And the reason our district qualified is because we had a number of students that were in their first 3 years in US schools. So that number was 17. And so that made our district qualify. We haven't heard back yet if we got the grant, but I understand there were a lot of districts that qualified this year. So we may not receive all of the funds, or hopefully still some. But I applied for the max amount recommended by a CISA representative and put in for programs that in the past have really proved effective with ELs, and also what research shows really moves them along in their academic instruction. We will qualify again this year. We started the year with 16 and then plus any new arrivals, which already right now is at 9. So we'd be at 25 compared to 17 from last year. So that's a little bit about the immigrant grant. And then I just wanted to share some projections with you. So I started this school year with actually 48 because 2 students left our district. And these are things that I just want to share about, like how the year changes as it goes on. So yes, I started with 48. I'm still anticipating another 12 exits this year based on how kids did on last year's results. We actually had 7 kids who missed exiting just by 1/10, 2/10, or 3/10 of a point. So they were really close. But this year, my focus really is to build teacher capacity. I want to help teachers really know those strategies and the questions that you had about how do you deal with a student who is so brand new. So I really want to help with teachers with that. And so one way I'm doing that is going to their monthly team meetings or content meetings. I also really want to focus on family engagement this year, including families much more in communications in their home language and encouraging participation in our school events like family nights. And also we are very fortunate enough to have another teacher at Lincoln this year. That's the CISA EL teacher. She's there full time. I think you're gonna be meeting her next month. So I'm working closely with her as well to support students at Lincoln, but she's doing most of the servicing at Lincoln this year, which frees me up to be at Central and Rossman and also attend the meetings with staff. So she and I will be supporting students in classroom, but especially focusing on the newcomers and 4th and 5th graders. As I look through district data, I see that if students don't exit by 4th or 5th grade, if they've been here since kindergarten, they maintain that EL status through 8th, if not into high school. And that's mainly because the access test is by clusters. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it goes 6, 8. So we really want to focus on our 4th and 5th graders this year that have been getting EL services since kindergarten to help them get that extra boost of academic English that they need to be able to exit out before heading off to middle school. And then finally, I just want to share some celebrations. It's at the bottom, but I'm actually going to say it. Number 1, I'm really proud of myself for returning for a 2nd year. I understand that hasn't happened a lot in the past, so I'm happy for that, and thank you for keeping me. I'm proud of the fact that I built really strong relationships with staff, students, and families. I was able to model a lot of EL strategies in classrooms this year, and my mentor Katie came in and filmed a lot of those, so we have a lot of strategies that can be shared that way, that teachers can watch a video of some strategies. I also was able to attend monthly staff meetings and share strategies with all staff, whether they had ELs in their classroom or not. I met with the principals most months to share things that are going on in the EL world. I also took some time in spring to shadow students, which just meant I did not give them services, but I just observed what they were doing in the classrooms. And then I also shared that data with principals so we know what we can do to better meet their needs, especially in the area of speaking, getting our EL students to speak in class. I think I briefly mentioned about sharing with staff how to translate and request interpretation. There's a document that all district staff have teaching them how to use technology for translation, how to request my services, and also to use an interpreter line if I'm not available. And then I think earlier when we talked about moving them up to high school, the EL coordinator who also teaches Spanish at Central, Sarah Ruiz, and I organized an 8th grade EL walking trip to the high school to give them a little more personalized tour to help relieve some of that stress and anxiety about heading up to high school with all new staff. And I'm also just really super proud of the percentage of students who exited this year. That number of 12 is more than double that exited in the past 2 years. And I'm really proud of that. I think it's because I worked on building those relationships with kids and families and just really communicated about what the EL program is and what services are. So that is my presentation. If there's not any more questions.
I have
Okay.
a question. Getting back with the families and with the kids and that stuff. Is there any way the district could look into saying? So I know quite a few people in this district that can speak, both they're bilingual. And I know a lot of our kids that come in are Spanish speaking. Is
That's
there
our
any-
highest language, even though we have all those other ones, Spanish is the highest.
And where we can hold where families like use our cafeteria or something, we use our schools for a lot of other things and opening up something and finding people that maybe come in and teach families. Not just the kids that are going to school, but the families in the school district that learn English. And if they have younger siblings and children, that would give them a pretty good opportunity to start learning the English language, what would be easier for the district coming up. Is there any idea, or is there any way that people can, that this district could maybe looking into something like that? Because we're just gonna get more and more, I think.
I agree, according to students who are having cousins come over, they said there's more coming.
Right.
We've had a bigger influx this year than we did last year, for sure. There's already, I think, 13 total new arrivals. So I haven't had that conversation district-wide yet, but this guy and I over here in talks with Bridges 120 to start a Spanglish program, and I've been telling parents about it, just one-on-one as I meet them. So just a night for any adult who wants to come in, English speakers who want to learn Spanish and Spanish speakers who want to learn English. No charge, just a night of conversation to bring families together, but also just to bridge that language. So we have that in the works, just I guess separately. But I'm hoping now with Parent Square too, that new app that we have, families are able to set the language that they receive into their home language. So this week at family nights, I'm gonna be there I'm at the Parent Square table. So I'm gonna be helping families with that. But I also do definitely see that need to have something, and I was thinking even not an after school, because a lot of the families that I know work second. So they aren't able to attend a lot of our things that are 4 o'clock, 4 to 7, or whatever they might be. So I love that idea, and I'd like to discuss it with whoever is on board to do maybe even some things like first thing in the morning after drop off, or midday, that I could do that right in the schools, just to make families feel more welcome and part of the community.
Can we get something there set up where Alex and Katie and you and this is perfect can get together? Maybe we can offer something like that. Or at least look into it. I just think it'd be, the farther we get ahead of this, I think the less burden it's gonna be on a district, because like I said, there's gonna be a lot more coming in. And people moving into our district and that stuff. It'd be better to be ahead of it than all of a sudden, and I think it'd take a little bit of a burden off the teachers in the classroom, especially at the younger age, it's and the older ages. You know, it's central school too, and that stuff too. They kind of get a heads up on some of this stuff, and just to stay ahead. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it, or anybody does, but.
Didn't we have a conversation similar to this about a year ago, where there was discussion of maybe some kind of partnership with Casa Guadalupe and them?
We do have that already, so CASA comes in at the elementary level, that starts next week.
Okay,
So Mondays and Wednesdays for 2-hour after school. And then at Central, it's starting the same week, first and third Thursdays. They're gonna come during the school day during Wildcat. So we do have CASA support as an outside agency, not so much the language for parents
Right.
kind of thing, but working with the students. And I know a lot of our parents know about CASA and are familiar with it, but the new arrivals will need some more information about that as a resource for them.
I just think it's a good idea, and I think the district should at least show, at least get it out there that if we can come up with a system to do something like that for families, I think it's an obligation to the school district to maybe do that. And I think in the long run, it'll save the district quite a bit of money, as far as I'm concerned. If you look into it or whatever, if it can't work out, like I says, it might not be able to work out, but there might be some ideas out there that could work, and so.
Ms. Malter, Ms. Keneally, Ms. Perfect, and I have met a couple of times, I think. to talk about this presentation, so I definitely think that's something that we can look into. I'm glad that you mentioned the partnership right away, because the partnerships with the community alleviate some of the stress on the district itself.
Right.
And then I also think there's merit in us looking at programs offered by other school districts and what they're doing to support their parents who are also learning English. I think that that community piece is very important, and perhaps we can be a trailblazer in that area. But perhaps there's also something that's occurring somewhere else that we can study and see if it's feasible to bring it here. So.
And just as I know, Casa's also in the community, like they use our church on Monday and Thursday nights already for 4 hours, and the kids are there and the parents are there. So besides what we do at the district, allowing them the partnership, they are out in the community already as well.
Well, maybe the district can get the word out that there's a lot of other places to go to, that's what I'm saying, and then. And maybe the district and these places can work together to have it done where we'd all would benefit from it then too, so that's where it's something that maybe you guys can all look at and. Take it from there, you know?
It'd be cool if they could come after drop off, like you're saying,
Yeah,
and stay at the Casa could come in and maybe work with the parents of the students while the
Exactly.
students are busy and working on their thing. They could provide that service right there where the parents already have to be to drop them off. It's interesting.
I'll follow up with them since the program's starting next week, and I know Casa also did summer reading at a church. I don't know if it's the same one, but all of the students were all invited to that too, as a summertime weekly literacy activity. So they are trying many ways to reach our families.
kind of hard for a child to go home and read a book to their parents when they don't know what they're saying in the book anyways. So I just thought it'd be good for that both ways, so, but. That's all I have. Anybody else?
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time and your feedback.
And if I could just close, one of the things that was really important is that we had a spotlight on teaching and learning this year. So that way individuals in the community would be aware of the different ways that we're supporting our students or the ways that our teachers are being innovative in the classroom. And so I wanted to thank you for being our first spotlight on learning for this year. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for that hard work,
Thank you.
Genevieve. Yeah, that's really good.
And now if we could call on Mr. Kraus for the administrative report.
Two minutes, Mr. Kraus, 2 minutes.
Everybody else took up I have.
Okay.
All right, quick update. We are now in September, I think, it's October, right? Summer was busy. We had a really good start to the year for my department. Put a lot of planning in, so we could have a smooth launch. And I would say it's one of the smoothest my department's ever had. There's a lot that goes into that stuff. We did receive just in time for the school year to start some ECF funded devices. That's some of the last of the E-rate type COVID money that came around. We need them. They go home with 6th graders. They are in 5th graders' hands, things like that. And so that was a nice thing to receive just in time. We had applied for that in May of 2022 and received funding commitment in August of this year. So it took over 12 months to get that. We worked with CNI this summer to train people, also to launch Parent Square, which I'm sure there'll be some sort of little update on in the future, but that is a new communication tool for school to home and home back to school. Does the direct translation to different messages automatically, as Marla had said. And it looks like a lot of people are using it, utilizing it. That is good. We've just almost hit 4,000 direct messages between teachers and parents. That's direct communication. That's not like broadcasts or posts. So we are now doing day-to-day work, planning for the next few months, and that's including events that are coming up, Veterans Days, Christmas concerts, systems maintenance projects that we do mid-year behind the scenes, and more.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you, Ryan. Moving on to action. Number one is the adoption of record retention schedule. The State Public Records Board adopted a new general record schedule for school districts. The new school district general records schedule addresses only records that are considered unique to school districts. Other record types, which are also used in other governmental entities, were removed as they have their own record retention schedule that will be updated in the near future. It is the recommendation to adopt the SDGRT and maintain our records for 7 years. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt the Wisconsin Public School District General Records Schedule and related records.
Second,
Second.
discussion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Number two, policy 0131.1 bylaws and policies and 8310 public records. Updates are marked. The first policy will allow existing policies to be approved as an action item. New policies will still be presented at the first reading and then as action in the second reading. The second policy has been updated to reflect the adoptions of the SDGRS. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 0131.1 bylaws and policies and 8310 public records.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion passed. Gallup survey renewal. In moving forward with renewing the Gallup survey tool, the recommendation is to change the vendor to CISA 6 for administrating the Q12 Gallup survey instead of purchasing directly from Gallup. This change will have a cost savings of $3,731.87 instead of purchasing directly from Gallup. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we renew the Gallup survey.
Second?
I think he's gotta read the purple thing, because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
about
Yeah,
what
the
you're
purple
purchasing
thing.
from.
Oh, motion to approve the renewal purchase of the Q12 Gallup survey from CISA 6 at cost not to exceed $5,018.13.
I'll
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Did we find it strange that it costs less to order not directly from the vendor? Not a question, I guess, I'm sorry.
So yes and no, CISA has purchasing power, and so by going directly with, we are, we get a cost
Makes
savings.
sense.
Might not have been a question, but it was a good point.
Right.
Can you remind me with the Gallup survey then? I know when we originally did it, we could have multiple surveys. And obviously in your administrative report, you have, Central Athletics Review Committee, and I'm wondering, is that a Gallup survey option or opportunity to also use the Gallup program to get that feedback from?
So I would say no, that the Gallup survey would really be around staff
Just the
engagement.
Q12 that I did. Okay.
As it's written here, the survey for extracurriculars would be more of a Google form type survey. We could use something like school perceptions, but I feel like we can gather the same information for no cost versus a small cost.
Mhm.
This does, just to expand, sorry, Mr. Pridemore, just to expand on the question that you had. We do have the ability to deliver additional surveys. However, each time you add on a survey, there's an additional cost. So this is with what we intend to use it for. If we were to create another survey to give out, there would be an additional cost to it. But this would be what was done last year. That's what the price is for this one.
So this should be one more survey this year.
This would be one survey for each of the next 3 years.
Got it. One survey per year for this price.
Right.
That was my question about what we have in plans to use these surveys.
Mhm.
Do we have a
Yes.
idea?
So with this, last year was the first year that the Gallup Q12 was taken, so that's really our baseline for the year for data. And so as we take it this year, next year, and the year after, again, at the same time of year, so that way you're comparing apples to apples versus one part of the year to another part of the year. We'd be looking to see, is our overall staff engagement increasing? Are the areas that we've chosen as our focus areas, have they improved or not improved? Do we need to keep focusing on them, or do we need to shift to another area? It also allows us to break it down by individual supervisors, so that way we can see if there's something different. For example, this building needs to work on these two things, but their strengths are over here. And this building needs to work on these two things and strengths are over here. So we'll use that information to make sure that we're continuing to engage our employees and teach about what engagement looks like. Engagement doesn't mean you get what you want all the time. What it means is that you feel like you can be part of the solution, that you're heard, and that you understand why the district is moving in a certain direction.
I will just say, from being on the committee with Don, I'm really happy to see that we're doing it for 3 more years, because I think if we're not, like, there was really great data that came out of those meetings and all the time and hours that staff and some public and some of us put into it. So I think this is going to be really beneficial for us to see what progress we make this year, and then in the next 2 after that. So I'm really happy to see it.
And the questions don't change, correct? We're
Correct.
keeping, so that's our baseline, is all the questions, and then every year we continue with that. And then once we figure out what was the challenges this year, if the challenges shift, that can be our focus, but the questions always are the same every year.
For the most part, yes. So the Q12 is 12 questions, plus they have an additional 0 question, so there's really 13. The 13th question is, what's your overall engagement? Are you yourself an engaged employee? And those will always be the same. They're simple, they're phrased the same every single time. The scale never changes, that's always consistent. What can change is we as a district can say, we have chosen to work on Q3 and 4 this year, so we want to ask specific pointed questions about, do you feel like we made growth in this area or not? And maybe the next year, our growth areas are questions 9 and 11. So the questions that are add-ons could be for 9 and 11. So that can change, but this core is always the same.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Wilk,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Banky,
Aye.
Pridemore,
Aye.
and I say aye.
Motion is passed. Moving on to number 4. Parent transportation contracts with 2023-24. By state statute, we are required to provide transportation or issue a transportation contract for private school students that reside within our district, and should they attend a private school within the district boundaries of Hartford Union High School. Since it is more cost effective to have parent contracts versus bus transportation, district will save approximately $38,700. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the 2023-24 parent transportation contracts at a cost not to exceed $3,410.40.
Second,
Second.
discussion? No discussion. Could we have a roll call, please?
Banky,
Aye.
Pridemore,
Aye.
Wilk,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
and I say aye.
Motion passed. Moving on, number 5, Red Ribbon Week at Central Middle School. Central participants in the National Red Ribbon Week annually participates in a National Red Ribbon Week annually in October. The theme for this year is Be Kind to Your Mind. The only content which will be presented are lesson videos and discussions, questions each day from October 23rd to the 27th during Wildcat time. We have a motion.
Motion to approve Red Ribbon Week at Central Middle School.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
What does the red ribbon stand for?
It's alcohol and drug prevention, so it's looking at AODA, which is supportive of our policy 5530. And it's to ensure that students are making good choices. In this case, be kind to your mind. The healthy habits that they're instilled with now will only lead to a better outcome in their adulthood.
Any other discussion?
Were you able to get any information?
So we talked, I looked at some of the supplemental materials, there wasn't anything that wasn't super supplanting the videos. I would say that there was some information just giving extra, but there wasn't something in replace of. And then last year I did look at a couple of the other videos. There were some that were, Tony Hawk was skateboarding, some other different niche things, but it still was a little bit more athletic heavy. So I did email the company and just said, hey, for future, can you keep in mind, artists, musicians, singers, different kind of thematics.
Yeah, that was more like, I didn't like that they were all athletics. But still a good message.
Yes.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion is approved. Moving on, speech and language service contract. This contract is to provide additional speech and language aid services for students who require these services with their individualized education plan. This contract will serve our private schools and offsite 4K students. In contracting, the district can claim transfer of service costs reimbursement to our district with for new students. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve a contract with Soylent for speech and language services at a cost not to exceed $50,000.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Was this a higher cost than the original contract through MJ Care, or was it
No.
similar?
It's the
Okay,
exact same.
I can't remember that.
Yeah,
back.
how would you remember that? Yes.
Okay.
it's about the same.
Thank you.
so I'm confused. So when you say offsite 4K, so our like Dream Center or our offsite programs, we actually can get money back because they're technically not in our district.
So we have a contract, then we can say, because we have new students that come in, we have to bill for them coming in because our current speech and language pathologists cannot service all of the children. So if we didn't have a contract, we just have to service all of them. But because we have a contract, we can say we're moving services around to be able to get extra monies for those kids that wouldn't have been accounted for, if that makes sense.
Any other discussion? Vote, all in favor? Oh, roll call, I'm sorry.
Pridemore,
Aye.
Wilk,
Aye.
Benke,
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
And I say aye.
Motion is approved. Moving on to 7, English language, arts and math programming. Programming is updated yearly following summer curriculum review. The program at a glance document summarize the programming, which includes the tiered instructional approach as well as materials and resources for ELA and math. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the English language arts and math programming.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is a pass. Moving on, number 8, the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes approval of the minutes for August 22nd, 2023. Regular meeting and September 13th, 2023, board retreat and workshop. B, approval of bills. We need to approve funds 10, 21, 27, 50, and 80. Payment vouchers 27,399 to 27,543 for the amount of $953,142.08. And approval of cash portion position statements, treasurer's report. We need to approve the August 2023 treasurer's report. Mr. Majerus, you can have the floor.
Thank you. For month ending August 31st, 2023, total district assets for funds 10, 21, 27, 50, and 80, $7,691,034. Total district liabilities for those same funds, $524,009. For total district net assets of funds 10, 21, 27, 50, and 80, $7,167,025.
And we do have personal recommendations and that stuff, if you guys wanna read them quickly or whatever. And then, going to need a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? Roll call.
Will,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Banky,
Aye.
Thrivemore,
Aye.
and I say aye.
Motion is approved. I need a motion to move into closed session per Wisconsin statute 19.851 CF for the purpose of the approval of the August 22nd, 2023 closed session minutes. We have a motion.
I'll motion to move into closed session per Wisconsin statute 19.851 CF for the purpose of approving the August 22nd, 2023 closed session minutes.
Second,
No second.
roll call.
Thrivemore,
Aye.
Will,
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Banky,
Aye.
and I say aye.
All right.
Yes.
Second,
Don said it.
and Louise seconded.
I did not, but I will. I
Oh, okay.
second. You said sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is, we are adjourned.